our first month of January is finally behind us. I know many of you are excited for 2024 as you have aspirations to perhaps buy a new home or get a larger home or perhaps even downsizing or relocating. So hence, let's look at January and see kind of what's been transpiring, and let's get a sense of where we think things are going to go in the new year. But before we do so, I just want to take this opportunity to remind you that it is that time of year. Taxes. We need to prepare for that. And as many of you know, I've been assisting clients for many, many years, long before real estate and mortgages with the tax side of things. Been helping clients with everything from the rental properties, small businesses, RSP contributions, home buyers plans, anything at all. So if this is something you'd like me to help out, please start using this time to put together your T documents, put all of them aside, and then email them over to me, as I always like to double check all those documents, make sure nothing's been missed. And of course, if you're dealing with your small business or rental property, get those Excel sheets put together. Any questions, feel free to use this time to email me. And just a reminder, the deadline is April 30th, but it's going to be there very, very, very quickly. And I do get very busy as we get into the month of April. So if you're capable and up for it, please send me over those documents, by March sometime, so I can get kind of a head start on everything there. And of course, I would be amiss if I did not take this opportunity to speak to one of my most recent listings. I, of course, am an advocate for home ownership, but it's not always the right situation for everybody. So right now we've got an absolutely gorgeous 2-story double-car garage townhouse available in the lovely, quaint town of Ayr, nestled right in between Cambridge and Kitchener. Very convenient access, family community, absolutely gorgeous home. 9-foot ceilings, lots of updates, huge kitchen. So if you know of anybody that might appreciate something like this, have them reach out to me ASAP before it's gone. If this is not the right fit, but you might have somebody or you yourself need some assistance, by all means reach out to me, and it'd be a pleasure to help them find their rental. Okay, let's start off with the mortgages. As I've often said to many of my clients, mortgages definitely directly impact the valuation side of things. So I've actually got a number of different charts that I'd like to share with you as I look at a lot of different sources here. So without further ado, let's go ahead and have a look at that. First off, let's look at the Canada 5-year bond rate. And I know this is a rather larger picture, if you can see it there, but it just kind of shows you that rates do go up and down, as we can see here, and we can see the big deep dive. Before 2020, we were actually starting to see those rates kind of start to go back up there, but then we had, of course, the significant drop in the overall bond market, and then, of course, over the last couple of years, we've seen those rates just shoot way up there. Okay, just to have a closer look at the last, say, 3 years. As you can see, the rates started to drop off and they completely tanked, and then we've gone way up. But on a positive note, we have seen in the last month or two the rates have started to drop off. Again, looking at this chart, I think it does an even better job of kind of conveying where the bond market goes. Because keep in mind, the fixed mortgages are directly correlated with the bond market, what's going on there. And to be honest, most people are looking at taking on a mortgage and buying a home based on the fixed mortgage, not so much the variable. So even though the Bank of Canada hasn't made any adjustments to the rate since July, the bond market has definitely been impacting the overall market. And so as you can see here, if you look over the course of this last year or so, I gotta move my little bubble a bit. You could see all throughout the summer there into the year, the bond yields continued to go up, which meant the cost of borrowing money to get your mortgage to buy your home was going to cost you more and more. And we kind of peaked in around the October into early November period. And then thankfully it started to taper off. Our rates honestly were well into the sixes, even on the best side. And some of my refinances and stuff like that were up into the sevens. So it was quite high. And thankfully, I'm very happy to see that start to taper off. But as you can see, right in the last couple of weeks, we have seen that gone up a little bit there. So there's been a lot of optimism. And so we are seeing that the real estate market since November, December has started to pick up. And I'm going to dive into that in a minute there. And I think also the mortgage cost of borrowing has improved, which means the buyers have gotten on board a little bit more with acquiring that home. And it brought them back in, especially with Christmas being behind there. So if you look at the Waterloo Real Estate Board's most recent January update, which I'll provide that link below, it says here that we see signs of improvement in the month of January. Okay, and keep in mind when they're looking at their charts and comparing things, they're always looking at the exact same time of year. So therefore, it'd be reflecting on January 2022 and of course January 2023, not so much reflecting on what happened during the month of October, November, and December. In which case, we did see the real estate market really slow way down. So if you look at January here and you look at everything from single family, townhouse, condo, semi-detached, as you can see, in many cases that we actually are showing for the month of January an improvement over January of 2023, definitely in regards to detached homes, townhouses. The condo market, unfortunately, has been hit a little bit there. I think, unfortunately, we just really flooded that market with just too many condo options. And the semis, it all depends too on what sales we've had. Keep in mind, January doesn't have a lot of volume, so you always have to be kind of cognizant of that. Again, looking at detached homes as an example, if we have a bunch of them selling in the 1.4 range and not as many in the lower ranges, then that can definitely skew our numbers there. And then overall, we have our property match, and you can see 2023 and 2024 thus far is looking very much on par there. Okay. Now, just speaking to this notion of dropping mortgage rates, which causes real estate values to go up, and vice versa. This is actually a U.S. chart, but our cousins to the south very much experience the exact same thing as us. So the red line here is our mortgage rates, and as you can see, as we got into 2020, the mortgage rates just bottomed out. I mean, it was absolutely great for anybody on the buy side. And of course, this is just talking not so much about home valuations, but more about how many sales were transpiring. And as you can see, the sales just went through the roof. And unfortunately, I couldn't find a chart here, but as many of us know, the home valuations just went really quite expensive. That being said, as we've gotten kind of these new high marks into 2023, our home sales have really bottomed off on the U.S. side, and Canada can pretty much just fall in line with that. Okay, just before I dive into the rest here, I just want to look at our actual peak stats here. In particular, looking at our January 753. February, there's not enough sales. We've only got 25 as of this report, which is earlier this last week. But again, for January, we do see a significant rise as opposed to November, December. But again, I would say that November, December is usually a slower time of year. And again, with the high mortgage rates, it really just discouraged a lot of buyers from buying at that point in time. January, rates are much better. People are a little bit more optimistic. Christmas is behind us. And so we're seeing a lot of those people coming back. We're seeing those multiple offers start to happen again. It'll be very interesting to see what happens over the next month or two. For those of you who perhaps follow the stock market and the bond market, today, the inflationary numbers came out. And while many people have been expecting rate drops to happen sooner versus later, it all really plays into the inflationary numbers. And unfortunately, for what I was told today, if anybody follows the news, the inflationary numbers came in a little bit higher than expected, which of course means that most likely the central banks, the Canadian central bank and the US and the other ones, are less likely to drop the rates, which of course will take some of that steam out of the market. So as of right now, there's been a lot of optimism. Everybody felt that we might see, perhaps even as early as March, some rate drops on the central bank side, in which case, that will impact that. The other thing too is that when we expect the central banks to drop the rates, often the yields on the bond market also start to drop to kind of in cohesion. But if they don't think they're going to drop, the bonds also don't drop, and actually they do quite the opposite. They go up, which of course most likely means my mortgage rates will be going up a little bit in the near term. So it's very hard to say. It's definitely a moving target. Best to reach out to me to find out what's going on there. Now, one more thing to keep in mind. I know a lot of people are saying, "Well, Dan, given how high the mortgage rates are and everything like that, should we see these things start to taper off and see home valuations start to drop off?" And as you can kind of see, and actually, I'm going to go back to that last chart. Our home valuations, even with the high mortgage rates, have not dropped off that much at all. So if you look here. If you look at our charts and the home valuations, obviously they dropped off a lot from 2022. But if I had a chart going further back, you see that really, we've had some ups and downs over the last 2 years, but it's really kind of staying right along that mark there. It's not really going up or down a lot. And I think that really comes into not just the mortgage rates, but just the extreme demand for housing. And part of that equation would be, bringing in all the immigrants. So I did just see this report here, and perhaps I'll include this in the newsletter, talking about the expectations and the plans for 2024, 2025, and 2026. And they are saying that they are, planning to bring in quite a few immigrants right here on the the Canadian site there, you can see our projections for 2023 was 465, and they do give us, of course, a bit of a range. And likewise for 2024, more or less the same numbers, perhaps even a little bit higher, and of course 2025. Now, in order for that to make any sense, and so you can understand, the pure demand on our housing, here is a chart that kind of shares with you the overall immigration over the last, say, 20, 23 years or so. And as you can see, our numbers have ranged in around the 220 to 300 range. So we are probably 80 to 100% or almost double the number of immigrants coming into our country. So of course we have to provide housing for these people on top of all our own personal needs. So I would argue that that's a big part of the reason why our home valuations are staying high despite the high mortgage rates. So just the cost of living is very, very high. So hopefully this insight is good as you plan for the new year. If you are considering buying a home or upsizing or downsizing or anything like that, by all means, give me a call and let's see if we can try to get a sense of where things are going. I don't have an exact crystal ball, but at least if I can give you some insight, or perhaps your friends or family members or coworkers. And again, if you have anything on the mortgage side, if you're coming up for renewal, perhaps we should talk about some options and some pros and cons. Maybe it makes more sense to go with a shorter term mortgage because we may see this hopefully in the future drop down. But of course, it's got to be within your comfort zones and whatever else. Positive news, just on the closing statement, is that our mortgage rates have dropped significantly since October, November. I do know there's quite a range depending on which bank institution you're looking at. So by all means, give me a call, send over your mortgage renewal notice. I'll look it over and I'll let you know. If it's a competitive rate, then by all means go ahead. And if I can do better, then please let me have the opportunity to show you how I can go above and beyond servicing your needs, not only giving you a better rate, but just overall great experience there. Okay, wishing you all the best for 2024, and thank you for taking the time to check out my newsletter. Any feedback, I would appreciate that.